Now that you're familiar with the basics of business intelligence for MYOB, let's start looking at the different report types. I'm going to go to the sales category to look at the sales reports. Scrolling down, this time I'm going to look at the all sales report. This includes all different types of sales, not just item sales in MYOB. More importantly though, I'm going to look at an analysis report. They're the ones with a little spreadsheet on the left-hand side, as opposed to a pivot report, which we'll look at later. So, all sales. Analysis reports give us the dimensions that we've looked at before, rows, drilling down by then by, ordering, subtotaling, grouping, and of course we can filter. They give us a lot of detail. Analysis reports, depending on where you are in the what kind of report you're looking at, you'll get quantities, average cost, prices, or if it's jobs, you'll get jobs. If it's general ledger, you'll get actuals, budgets, etc. You get a lot of detail here in the analysis type reports. Sometimes that's too much detail. So what you can do is when you've got too many columns and you don't want to see that, maybe you just want to see total sales and quantity and you want to get rid of everything else, we can plus and minus columns. And that will show you that you can hide columns. So maybe we want to get rid of the averages and maybe just show quantity, total sales and margin percentage. But keep in mind that there might be some other fields for that dimension that are hidden. Maybe you do want to see the email address. Oops, we don't want it at the end though. Let's move right up to the top. It's as far as it can go. So now we've got a report that's just showing quantity, sales and margin, but we've also now exposed the email address, which could be quite handy if you want to do a mail out to who's bought certain products in a certain date range. So always keep in mind the plus or minus columns there. Now, the information that you'll be able to see will differ depending on the dimension you're looking at. So for customer, we could see email address, but if we change the rows to something like items, then email address disappears because we don't have an email address for items. But let's have a look now and see what we've got. Now we've got a few other dimensions. These are some of the ones we've hidden. And because we're looking at all sales now, we've also got the ability to look at time billing sales. Okay. So, as I said, depending on what the dimension is, will determine what columns you can see and hide. So that's very handy for doing that. The next thing I want to show you is a dimension, a row dimension that we haven't looked at yet, and that is something called detail. Up until now we've been looking at these summarised ones, which are summarising all of the transactions for that period by item, by customer, etc., looking at a high level. And often that's what we want to do because then you can start seeing trends. But sometimes, just sometimes, you want to see everything to find out what's really happening, in which case you've got the option to look at detail. This will show, depending on which reports you're on, right down to the transaction level. Again, we can always sort on things. We can remove our group by, or we could change our group by maybe to customer. And now we've got every invoice. In fact, every line item of every invoice, because if you've got multiple items that you're selling for each customer, right the way down. That's a lot of detail, but just as we did the plus or minus columns, detail is an area where we make every field that we're reporting on available. So this can be quite overwhelming, but sometimes I get clients call and they want to see really specific information right down at a detail level, or they want to take it out to Excel and do something with it over there, do some further analysis. So I've just gone and exposed every single column, and we can see from there we get all of the information we get, and from there you can go and then hide the ones you don't want, but we've got all of this information that belongs to every transaction. So activities, the custom lists, category, custom fields, all the address fields. Take it across some more. Email address, all of the items, right down to the journal memo, referral source, salesperson, whether they're active or not, standard cost, if you put standard cost into your against your items, right down to the individual transaction. So from there, you can plus or minus columns and often get some really good detailed reporting. I'm going to go right back to the beginning on the breadcrumb again. I'm going to change the dimension here to item. I just want to show you another feature that we can use in analysis reports. Sometimes you're going to get reports that have got zeros in them, a lot of zeros sometimes, and you want to hide those. We've got the ability to do that as well as hide columns. In the properties section, there is a number of key features, and one of those is the ability to hide 0 rows. So if you click that, you can now save your report so that all zeros are hidden. A good way of cleaning up your report. So hide columns, hide 0 rows. There are a few other features in properties here. Again, you can choose to show or hide the report rows. If you've got thousands and thousands of rows, sometimes you may want to hide them. You can choose to show or not show group subtotals. But an interesting one is how we show the subtotals. Traditionally, we show the subtotals at the bottom of the data, but I could show those subtotals at the top. Again, if you've got a lot of detail, a lot of data, sometimes you don't want to be scrolling down to the bottom to see the total all of the time. You can see it at the top. So if we did this by customer type, for example, we'll get our total retail sales and our total wholesale without having to scroll to the bottom. Sometimes you may want to export your data to Excel and do some further manipulation, in which case it's a real nuisance having your subtotals as a total. Often you'd rather to have that word retail on each of the rows. We can do that as well. So instead of having a subtotal as a total, again in properties, we could show the grouping as a column. So now for each item, or I could probably better to change it back to customer, we can now see for each customer which ones are retail and which ones are wholesale, because we've got it against each. If we take this out to Excel, you can sort, you can do all sorts of things with it. Much more convenient. So that's in this properties area. So do have a look in here, have a play around with it. We can also flick the layout between vertical and horizontal. So if I do that, what I've done is I've put what was the rows has become columns, and what was the columns has become rows. Can be handy sometimes depending on how your data looks. I'll flip that one back because it looks better here. So that's it for analysis reports. Very good at looking at the detail, and next we'll look at pivots.